I think acrylic ink is the best ink for drawing. It's waterproof, light-fast, and permanent. So the question is, can you use acrylic ink in your fountain pen or technical pen? The short answer is no. The long answer is maybe, and the better question is, could you use some other pen that would work better with acrylic ink? Short answer first. Acrylic ink is likely to clog your pen, so do not try this at home unless you're willing to ruin your pen. I ruined a fountain pen with acrylic ink that I left in the pen for a couple of days. Even though I was using it regularly and keeping it capped when I wasn't using it, the ink dried out between the nib and the feed, and I had to push harder and harder to get the ink to flow until the nib got bent out of shape. Long answer second. This is a Platinum Preppy fountain pen. It has a good nib and a tight cap seal. It works well with platinum carbon ink, which is a pigmented fountain pen ink. There are similar warnings about pigmented fountain pen inks and acrylic inks. They're both likely to clog your pen, but I've kept platinum carbon ink in Platinum Preppy pens for months without problems, so I thought a Platinum Preppy would be a good fountain pen to try with acrylic ink. I really don't like the name Preppy, but that's not the pen's fault, and it's a good cheap fountain pen. I also thought a Rotring Isograph would be a good technical pen to try with acrylic ink. It also has a tight cap seal, and it's made for pigmented inks. It's more expensive than a Preppy, but it's nowhere near as expensive as some fountain pens. I bought this Preppy for about £5, and I bought this Isograph in a set that worked out at about £15 per pen. The ink I tried was Liquitex Carbon Black. Liquitex says on their website that their inks are the ideal consistency for technical pens, so I thought it would be a better choice than an acrylic ink with a thicker consistency. For the fountain pen, I refilled an empty ink cartridge using a narrow plastic dropper. The cartridge was too narrow to fill with the dropper that came with the ink. For the technical pen, the cartridge was wider, but the narrow dropper worked better anyway. It took a few minutes for the ink to work its way through these pens, but the good news is that they did both work with acrylic ink. The Preppy didn't seem to flow as well with the Liquitex ink as it does with the Platinum ink, but it worked. The Isograph seems to work pretty well. But this was not a scientific test, so your mileage may vary. As I said earlier, I had already ruined one fountain pen, so I cleaned this one as soon as I was done using it. I used a rubber squeeze bulb that I had cut so the opening was the same size as an ink cartridge, and it would fit tightly on the pen. I used it to flush water through the pen until it ran clear. I did the same thing with the technical pen, but I hadn't already ruined one of those, and so I left it inked for a couple of days before cleaning it to see if it would fare better than the fountain pen had. It seemed fine after a couple of days, but it got quite messy. Ink seemed to be leaking out inside the cap, so maybe this particular ink was too thin for this particular pen. Fountain pens and technical pens come in different sizes, and the consistency of the ink may be better suited to certain sizes than others. I cleaned out the Isograph in the same way as the Preppy with a rubber squeeze bulb that I cut to size. I worried that I had damaged it by flushing it with too much pressure, but when I refilled it with platinum carbon ink later, it didn't seem to leak at all. I don't think I'll keep using acrylic ink in these pens, but it's good to know that you can, kind of. I think there are 3 reasons to use Liquitex Carbon Black instead of platinum carbon ink in these pens. 1, it's cheaper and more widely available, at least here in England. 2, it's well documented, at least in English. Liquitex provides clear information about the archival quality of their inks, the pigments they use, and the results of ASTM light fastness tests. Platinum does not, but I suspect these inks are very similar in light fastness and permanence in practice. 3, Liquitex is slightly more resistant to erasing than Platinum, which means you need to be slightly less careful when inking over a pencil underdrawing that you want to erase. But both of these inks get lighter after erasing. Overall, I'm happy with platinum carbon ink in these pens, and I don't think acrylic ink is worth the extra risk of damaging your pen or the extra fuss of cleaning it regularly. I don't worry about keeping these pens inked with platinum carbon as long as I'm using them regularly, whereas I would with acrylic. But a 4th reason to use acrylic ink is that it's not only available in black, and you may want to work in color. And so I think the question that remains is, if you want to use acrylic ink, could you use some other pen that would work better than a fountain pen or a technical pen? And the answer, I think, is that you could use a dip pen. Dip pens work really well with acrylic ink. Some dip pens even have nibs that are more or less the same as fountain pen nibs and can write as smoothly. And some dip pens make lines as thin as technical pens. If you'd like to learn more about dip pens, I made a 3-part series on how to use dip pens for drawing, so please check it out. Please also like this video and subscribe to my channel for more videos about pen and ink. Thanks for watching.